Now, Europe is facing an immigration crisis, mostly from people, of course, fleeing the wars in Syria, as well as ISIS, and, of course, crushing poverty. Now, many of them are, unfortunately, struggling to find a place to go, and especially with some countries like Hungary putting up fences now to keep them out. But there is some good news in this, and this comes from Raw Story. Now, more than 10,000 Icelanders said that they were ready to welcome Syrian refugees, not just into the country, but into their homes, after the government said that it was only going to let in a few. Now, there's a cap of 50. They only want to allow 50 people into the country at a time, or basically a cap of 50 people for like the year. Now, these people are saying, no, we will take care of them. Let them in, we'll take care of them. We'll invite them into their homes if we have to. In fact, there was somebody on Facebook that was one of these 10,000 people that said this: I'm a single mother with a 6-year-old son. We can take in a child in need. I'm a teacher and would teach the child to speak, read, and write Icelandic, and adjust to Icelandic society. We have clothes, a bed, toys, and everything the child needs. I would, of course, pay for the airplane ticket. And this was Hekla Stefansdottir. She wrote that in a Facebook post in response, of course, to the Icelandic minister. Now, she's not the only one. There's actually a lot that offered not only housing, food, and clothes, but also to help them integrate into Icelandic society, to actually give them a permanent home and to help them become, successful members of society. I don't know why it was so hard to think of that word. Quote, I think people have had enough of seeing news stories from the Mediterranean and refugee camps of dying people, and they want something done now. And this comes from Bryndis Björgvinsdóttir. Hopefully I didn't butcher that name. Icelandic is not exactly my first language. She told that to Icelandic public television RUV. Now, Welfare Minister Hekla Stefansdottir told RUV that authorities were studying the Facebook offers and would consider increasing the number of refugees accepted under humanitarian quota, which was currently capped, as I said, at 50 for this year. Oh, and the next year, by the way. I have made it clear that I don't want to name a maximum figure, but that we will explore every avenue available in welcoming more refugees. Now, in 2014, there were some official statistics that showed that they welcomed in just over 1,117 immigrants last year. Now, there's a lot of people, as I said, fleeing from these areas in Syria, as well as probably Iraq, where ISIS has taken over. Now, nobody wants to live under fucking ISIS. So definitely, I could see them definitely going to somewhere else, going to Europe. I mean, I'd want to escape that shit. Anybody would. Unless you're a fundamentalist, of course. Now, some important points here is that there's a lot of people going into Europe, and there's a lot of people trying to get into Iceland as well. Now, Iceland is a country with a population of around 330,000 people. Now, that's not very much. Now, another point is, though, that even though they're such a small country, they're welcoming these people. 10,000 people want to welcome Syrian refugees into their home and offer them food and education and an escape from poverty and war. That's awesome. That's one of the greatest examples of human decency that I've seen, and it's very heartening to look at. Now, let's compare and contrast. As I'm an American and I'm versed in American foreign immigration issues, I have to point out that America has turned away a lot of people, especially those unaccompanied children that came from Honduras and other war-torn South American countries, by the way, that are ravaged by our drug war. So, and it's not just us. Not all of Europe is great. As I mentioned, Hungary's putting up fences, and the UK has also been turning away immigrants as well. Tory PM David Cameron called them a swarm. And of course, he was rightly attacked for being racist. Like, you're being racist against these migrants by saying that they're a swarm, like a swarm of locusts. It's not exactly nice thing to say about a group of people that are just fleeing violence and poverty. So yeah. Now the Pope actually had to weigh in on this as well. And he said that countries that turn away migrants would need to seek forgiveness from God for their actions. Now, if America prides itself on being a so-called Christian nation, well, then we should be open to immigrants. We should be open to not just people from Honduras, but people from places like Libya, places like Iraq, places like Syria. We should be more open to that, since they are refugees. Well, remember, God and Jesus in the Bible, they refer to immigrants as sojourners, and that you should treat them as if you would treat your own kinsmen, your own countrymen, allow them into your homes. And Iceland's a secular country, and yet they are being more Christian than our country, which is the supposed Christian country. And I just had to point that out. And the last point that I want to make is that this is sort of the cost of meddling in places like the Middle East. Now, we didn't cause a Syrian civil war, obviously. However, through our actions, indirectly, or even in some ways directly, by invading Iraq, we created ISIS. We created some of these issues. I think in some way we hold responsibility, not just for creating the problem and solving the problem, but for also helping the people that have been displaced by this problem. Now, if that sounds too I'm sorry, but I think, as the old saying goes, you broke it, you bought it.